Real estate is one of the best places to invest your money, but sometimes you're gonna lose money. That's why today I want to walk you through my worst real estate deal ever. That way you can learn from my mistakes and hopefully save yourself some money. What's up everybody, I am Jasprit Singh from theminoritymindset.com, where money minds rethink rich. I released this video on YouTube a number of years ago where I walked you through my worst real estate deal ever right before I sold this property. I called this my nightmare property because this property gave me so many headaches and it was the only deal that I have lost money on to date. Normally, I don't buy real estate to flip it or sell it, but this property gave me so many headaches that I just needed to get rid of this property and get rid of this pain. If you haven't seen that video yet, I'm gonna link it for you in the description below. That way you can really understand what happened. So I released that video years ago and I sold that property like a week after recording that video, and I tried to forget about that property because that one left me with a lot of nightmares. But YouTube being YouTube brought that video back to life and has been sharing it a lot recently. So I wanted to use this video as an opportunity to dive deeper into what happened. That way you can learn from my mistakes and really understand why that was my worst deal ever. So let me start with a little bit of backstory because I got into real estate kind of really indirectly. No one in my family was a real estate investor. I didn't know any real estate investors, but I wanted to get involved in real estate because I was reading all these money management books and these investment books, and every one of these books said that wealthy people invest in real estate. I had no idea what that meant, but I figured, if I want to be wealthy, I should invest in real estate too. I started college when the 2008 real estate crash was happening, and during that time, I was starting an event planning business that really started to take off. So I was hosting these college events and I was making good money while I was in college. I went to school in Michigan, and Michigan was hit hard by the 2008 crash because the whole Michigan economy almost relied entirely on the automotive industry. So when the automotive industry crashed and the real estate industry crashed, Michigan was slammed. And so homes that were once selling for $150,000 were selling for below $15,000 in like the blink of an eye. Now, I didn't know anything about real estate investing and I had nobody to talk to about real estate investing. So I just decided to jump in with both feet, and I bought my first property when I was 19 years old. It was a small condo and I paid like $8,000 for it. That was the whole price. That wasn't a down payment. I paid $8,000 to buy this condo and I leased it for like $600 a month. And I was like, wow, this real estate investing thing is pretty cool. Back then, this didn't seem like an amazing deal at the time. I just thought that was normal because I had no idea what normal was. This was my first time ever learning about real estate or real estate investing. And so I had never seen anything else. This was what I just thought was normal. So I created the system in my mind where anytime I made money, I would use it to buy real estate. That way I can create this passive income, this cash flow. So I hired a property management company, and this property management company turned out to not be a real property management company. There were a lot of real estate scams happening during the 2008 crash. And so this property management company I hired wasn't a real property management company, and they connected me to a contractor who was not licensed. The property management company was not licensed. They told me they were, and they connected me to a contractor that told me was licensed but was not licensed. So now I'm working with this contractor who told me he was licensed but was not licensed, and I was using this contractor to renovate my properties. Now, to be fair, the contractor was a good guy. He had a good heart. He was a nice person, but he ran into some financial trouble that I didn't know about. Long story short, this contractor told me that I needed to start buying some real estate in Detroit because property values were so cheap in Detroit and I could buy something for less than $20,000, put in very little work, and I could sell it for double the price, or I could rent it out for $700 to $1,000 a month. I was still going to college full time and I was running this event planning business, and I had done 2 deals to date and nothing major had gone wrong to this point. So I figured, okay, let's do it. You find me a deal. So the contractor found me a home for sale for $17,000, and he told me that we could renovate this property for less than $5,000, and after that I'd be able to rent it out and make a great return. Now, typically when I purchase a property, I have my own private property inspector walk through the property, and I have the city come out and they walk through the property with me. That way I can see exactly what works needs to be done. But I trusted my contractor, and he said, you know what, you don't need to worry about doing any of that. Just trust me with the money and I will make sure that this property makes you a ton of money. Big mistake. This property gave me my real life MBA. I didn't have any real formal business experience minus running a business. I was going to school thinking I was going to be a doctor. I didn't know any investors. I had no investing experience. I just jumped right in, and this was how I learned. I'm a trusting person by nature. I try to be honest, and I hope that people will be honest with me. But this contractor, turns out he wanted me to buy this property not just because I would be able to make money, but because he was having financial issues and he was hoping that this property would be a way for him to make some money to cover his financial expenses. So he pushed me to buy this home, that way I'd write him a check to do the repairs so he'd have some money to pay his back bills. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Oh, Jasprit, these are just beginner mistakes. I can't believe you didn't know that. Even a baby would know better than to do that. Yeah, you're right. I probably should have known better. but I didn't. And this was how I learned. And this property set me up to be able to do much bigger deals and commercial deals and multifamily deals in the future profitably because I learned what not to do. This is what the numbers look like. I bought the property for $17,000 and the contractor told me that I'd be able to renovate the property and get it rent ready for between $5,000 and $5,500. So let's assume that I had to pay $5,500 to get it rent ready. That means this property would have cost me all in right around $22,500. I would be able to rent this property now for $750 a month. So if, assuming I have to pay out half of my rental income and expenses, so this is taxes, insurance, maintenance, vacancy costs, if I pay out half of this in my expenses, that would leave me with a 20% annual return on my cash just from cash flow. A 20% cash on cash return on your money is an amazing deal, which is why I figured, this sounds pretty good. The first problem was it cost me way more than $5,500 to get this property rent ready. As soon as I gave my contractor the check to start working, I don't think I gave him the full check. It was probably like $2,000 to $3,000. I stopped hearing from him. I didn't have a contract between me and the contractor. I just told him what work I wanted to get done, and he told me it'd be $5,000 to $5,500, and so I said fine. Wrote him a check, and I thought that'd be it because this is what we've done in the past, and it had worked, no problem. But this is where things started to come up because now he was having his own financial issues, so he stopped showing up. The work shouldn't have taken longer than a couple weeks, max. But we were months into the property and it was almost as if nothing had started yet. And this was getting really expensive because when you own a property, you have to pay property taxes and insurance. And every month that the property is not leased out, you are losing out on rent. And so I am paying for all these costs out of my pocket and nothing is being done. So it is getting expensive. And so this is when I started to get really irritated and I had to come up with a solution. Either I keep badgering my contractor to do the work, or I just got to eat up the cost and find somebody else to do the work. Well, I found somebody else who could do the work, and they told me that they'd be willing to do the work essentially for free as long as I pay for the materials and as long as I give them the home to stay in for a few months. And so I figured, okay, this is not going to cost me as much money out of pocket, so I'll just let them stay in the home, do the work at their own pace, and I'll have the property rent ready in just a few months, and I won't have to pay that much more money out of my pocket. This opened up a whole new can of worms because this person was staying in my property rent free, and he didn't have a lease, and he wasn't doing any work, and on top of all of that, we opened up the system at Home Depot where he could buy things on my account, and I figured he'd be buying things from Home Depot to do the work at my property, but he was buying things from Home Depot to do work at other people's properties. That way he could save some more money. So now I was stuck again. Luckily, I found a new property management company to hire, and these people were way more competent than the first property management company I hired. So I told them what was going on, and we came up with a plan to evict this person who was living in my property and not doing any work. So now, after all that headache, we finally get this contractor out, and the property is in way worse shape now than it was to begin with because this contractor who was living in the property just destroyed the property. I mean, everything was wrong. He kept his dog in the property and didn't take care of it, and there was dog crap literally everywhere throughout the property. It was bad. And so now we have this completely destroyed house that I have lost a ton of money on already that I have to figure out what to do with. So now I learned my lesson, and I only work with licensed and insured contractors who are a little bit more expensive, but they're way better and they're way more reliable in getting things done and done on time. So now it's probably been a year since I bought the property, and the property is finally getting renovated and things are looking good. But remember, I did not do a private property inspection when I purchased the property, so I didn't know actually what was wrong with the property. I just trusted my contractor's word. But the cosmetics of the property, like the way the property looks, is looking good. But then we see that the water and the sewage system isn't draining properly. Turns out that before we purchased this property, somebody took bags of cement and poured it down the main drains. That way the piping from the property to the main sewage lines of the city were completely blocked with cement. So now we found a new problem that was completely avoidable, because if you get a private property inspection before you purchase a property, I'll talk more about this a little bit later in this video, but a private property inspection's job is for somebody to walk through your property and find all the issues with your property, like the plumbing issues and the mechanical issues and the electrical issues, before you buy the property, so you know what you're getting into before you buy it. Anyways, now I have to pay thousands of dollars to bust out the cement in the basement, to pull out the piping, and to redo all the plumbing from the house to the main sewage drains. That way we can have water flow from the house out of the house. Now the property is looking good because we did all the cosmetic upgrades and the water is finally working, so water can leave the home. So now we're ready to get licensed for rental. So I don't like to do things in a shady or illegal way. I know a lot of people try to push the boundaries, but I personally just don't like doing that. And during this time, after the 2008 real estate crash, Detroit was really struggling as a city. And so lots of investors understood this, and when they purchased properties to rent out, many of them were not licensing their homes as rentals because the city just didn't have the resources to enforce this. And I didn't want to do that. It just didn't seem right to me. So what I did was I decided to register my home as a rental with the city because I wanted to do it the right way. Like I used to go to those real estate investor conferences in my area, and everybody would be talking, and anyone I talked to who had rental properties in Detroit, none of them, not a single one of them, had registered their properties as rentals because they all said that it was a nightmare if you did that and there was no repercussions if you didn't register. But I was worried about a tenant potentially slipping and falling at this property and then suing me and then finding out during the lawsuit that this property is not registered for a rental, and I don't want to have to deal with all that potential headache, so I decided to get this property registered. Well, the city building department at the time did not have a very coherent system on how to manage their rental properties. It's gotten much better since then, but back then, it was not good. The way it works is you go to the city, you fill out a piece of paper and you pay a fee and you tell them that you want to use this property as an investment property. But in order to do that, the city is going to send out their inspectors, and these inspectors are going to come to your property and they're going to tell you what repairs need to be done in order for this property to be good as a rental. The problem was if you wanted to make any minor change at the property, like even changing your smoke alarms or painting your windowsills, you had to pay a $100 permit fee. So anytime you had to make a minor change, you had to pay a permit fee first. Second, these city inspectors didn't coordinate with each other. One city inspector would say one thing, and then a second city inspector would say something completely different. And so it was so hard to get approved because you would do all the work, and then a second city inspector would come out and say, why did you do this? And you would tell them, well, the first city inspector said this. And they'd say, nope. And then they would fine you because you didn't do the work right to their standards, even though you did it to the first inspector standards. And third, to top it all off, the city inspectors would give you work and renovations that made no sense just because they could. So I ended up paying, I don't know, more than $1,000 for sure just in permit fees, because anytime I had to paint a window or change the batteries, I had to pay $100. And then city inspectors would come out and they would keep disagreeing on everything. One of the most frustrating examples of this was the electrical riser on the back of a house. So in the back of your home, you have an electrical meter. Attached to that is an electrical riser. One city inspector came out and said, your electrical riser needs to be 15 feet high. So we made that change, we paid the permit fee, and we made this electrical riser 15 feet. And then the second inspector will come out and they said, why is this riser 15 feet high? I want it 12 feet high. And we were like, the first inspector just said we needed 15 feet high. So now we have to start the process all over again, have to pay to fix the work, I had to pay a permit fee, and now we have to pay the inspector to come out a third time just to review the electrical riser because they couldn't agree on the work in the first place. And now when all these inspectors keep coming back again and again and again, they just keep finding more work because this is how they're getting paid. And so now inspectors would come and say, you know what, we need you to replace all the electrical inside the home. Why? I don't know, we just want you to do that. And so then we ended up upgrading the entire electrical. We upgraded and replaced the entire plumbing system throughout the entire house, and we redid all the mechanical. No matter how many times we asked why, we could never get a justification for why we needed to do these repairs that were not necessary because these things were already new. They were already functioning fine, but the city kept telling us that we needed to upgrade it without any reason why. Then, if that wasn't bad enough, a new inspector comes out and he said that we needed to raise the elevation of the house. Why? I have no idea, but he thought that the house was too low, and so he told us to raise the elevation of a house. It is not cheap or easy to raise the elevation of a house, and so now I was like, you gotta be out of your mind. This was really early on in my career, so I didn't have a ton of money. And so anytime I made money, I was funneling this money back into this property, and anytime I made rental money from my other properties, I was using all that cash to fund these repairs, and it got to the point where my business bank account was exhausted, and I had a drawer of cash in my home, like not a drawer of cash, but I had a drawer where I kept my reserve cash, and I had to dig into that drawer of cash, whatever I had left, because that was the only cash I had left to fund these repairs. Luckily, this was back during the 2008 crash time when renovations and repairs were really cheap because contractors needed work, but it was really expensive. I think I ended up paying like $7,000 or $7,500 to raise the elevation of the home. And it still doesn't make sense why, but that's just something I had to do in order to get the property licensed so I could start making some money. Looking back, my problem was I was young, I was inexperienced, and I had no way to fight back. Like if I was to redo this, I would start working with an attorney early on who has experience dealing with the city, because I was getting abused and I had no way to fight back, and I didn't even know you could fight back. But if I knew this now, I would have hired an attorney and I would have disputed half of the stuff. That way we could have actually figured out what needs to be done and why, and I could start working with the higher ups in the city. That way we can figure out what's really right and what's wrong. I'm not just saying this because I am an attorney. I'm saying this because if you have a good real estate attorney, they have to be a specific real estate attorney who is very familiar with doing real estate deals, because a real estate attorney can help you when it comes to buying the home. They can help you with dealing with contractors, and they can help you dealing with cities, because sometimes cities are gonna make your life very difficult, and if you have a good attorney on your side, they can help fight for you. So now I've dealt with contractor issue after contractor issue, and I've dealt with the city, and we're finally getting work done, and it looks like we're finally getting ready to rent this property out, and then the property got robbed. Somebody broke into the property and stole our hot water tank because they knew the home was vacant, and so that was a whole new expense that we had to deal with. You can see why I call this property a nightmare property, because everything that could go wrong did go wrong, but it taught me a lot. At this point, I've owned the property for years. I haven't made a single penny from it, and I've spent way more money on renovations on the home than I did actually purchasing the home, but the home is finally ready to be rented out after years of headache. So my management company rents out the home, we got a tenant, and now somebody's finally paying us $750 a month, and things are finally looking good, and I'm able to breathe again. Now, a few months into the tenants living in the property, a city inspector has the urge to go out and check on our property. They don't have any reason to go out there because the property is fully licensed. They don't tell us they're going to go out there, and they don't tell our property manager or the tenant that they're going to go out there. They just wanted to go check up on it. Why? I have no idea. So they go to the property, they knock on the door, and it turns out, we didn't know this was happening, but it turns out the tenant was running an illegal babysitting operation. So now the city inspector freaks out, they fine us, and they tell us that we need to get rid of this tenant, and so now the headaches start all over again. At this point, there's new fees I have to pay, I have to kick out the tenant, and at this point, I'm just so fed up with the property, I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna sell it. That way I never have to deal with this property again. Now, I do got to give credit where credit's due, because there's been a lot of changes in the city of Detroit since I dealt with this nightmare property, and there's been a lot of upgrades in the city building department since then, and the new supervisor for the building department actually saw my video, the worst real estate deal ever, and he reached out to me personally and said, I apologize for all the things that you had to deal with, and if you have any more issues, just contact me directly. You know, the 2008 crash had so many implications, like cities were on the verge of bankruptcy, and so a lot of things just were not going right. But I don't regret doing this deal one bit. Yeah, I lost some sleep, and yeah, I lost some money, but I look at it like the tuition I had to pay to understand how to be a good real estate investor, because I learned so much and I made so many mistakes in one deal that it set me up to have the knowledge and have the experience to be able to do much bigger deals now. Plus, when I do real estate deals now, I'm very confident, because I know that if I could overcome this nightmare property hurdle, I can do any real estate deal. So if I could leave you with like 5 lessons or take home points from this nightmare property, number 1 is make sure you do your own due diligence. Know the area and know the property where you're buying. Do your research, walk through the neighborhood, understand, is this a good area where you want to invest, and do your due diligence in the property. Essentially, you want to know, is this property that you're buying in an area where money is flowing or where money is leaving? And the easiest way you can do that is just by going to the city hall and asking them, are there new developments coming into this area? If there's more developments coming, that means there's more money flowing into the area where you're buying. Second, please do yourself a favor and get yourself a private property inspection anytime you buy a property. I talked about this earlier in the video, but a private property inspector's job is literally to walk through the entire property and the roof and to check out all the systems in the property, the electrical, the plumbing, the mechanical, to make sure they all work. This might cost you a few $100s, but the $500 you paid to a private property inspector could save you tens of thousands of dollars in the future. You want to make sure you do this inspection before you purchase the property. So when you enter into a contract to buy a property, whether it's a home or a commercial building, you want to tell the owner that you have a contingency period, maybe it's 10 days, maybe it's 30 days, where you can walk through the property and have your inspector walk through the property and see what repairs need to be done. If you don't like what needs to be done, then you can back out of the deal, and that way you don't have to pay anything. If I would have had my private property inspector walk through this property before I bought it, I would have learned about the plumbing issues, and chances are I wouldn't have bought this property. Now, I never ever buy a property without doing a private property inspection first. Third, get yourself a good real estate attorney and have them on your side throughout the entire real estate process. So when it comes time for you to buy the property, work with them. When you're working with your contractor, work with your attorney. And when you're working with the city, work with your attorney. A good real estate attorney isn't cheap, But spending that money up front on an attorney could save you thousands and thousands of dollars in the back end. Fourth, make your own investing decisions. Do not decide to invest in an area just because somebody else says it's an easy way for you to make money. I'll be honest, when I bought this nightmare property, I bought it for all the wrong reasons. I bought it because my contractor said that it'd be an easy way for me to make a lot of money. But it wasn't. Make your own investing decisions because it's your money on the line. Not your contractors, not your friends, not your uncles. It's your money being invested, so make sure you make your own decisions and don't let other people tell you how to spend your money. And number 5, get the city involved before you actually buy the property. So after you enter into a contract to buy a property, whether it's a home or a multifamily or a commercial building, you want to get the city involved and ask them to come out and tell you what repairs need to be done, or ask them what needs to be done in order to get this property licensed. That way you know everything before you actually purchase the property. And if you find out that there's a lot of work that needs to be done to get approved by the city, then you can back out of the deal before you actually spend a whole lot of money. This is all part of the due diligence process because you want to know exactly what the work is going to be and exactly what's required and exactly what it's going to cost you before you start paying out the big checks. If you enjoyed this video, here's a video that I think you'll love, and while you're at it, subscribe to our YouTube channel and join our free finance and business newsletter. And as always, keep hustling. And he was like, yo, I need some more time. It's a little bit more work than I thought, but don't worry, we're gonna get it done. So okay, a couple more weeks go by, I go to the property to see what's going on, because now it's been like a month and